Hi, good evening everyone, and welcome to the first session of Include Her Startup Cohort. Include Her Startup Cohort will be focusing on empowering women developers to build their own startups. In this cohort, we will provide the tools, knowledge, and inspiration needed to shape the future of technology and business. This cohort is dedicated to nurturing the entrepreneurial spirit in women developers. We believe in the power of diversity and innovation, and this program is designed to help women turn their ideas into thriving businesses. So, without any delay, let's start our first session. And I'd like to invite our expert speaker, Ms. Sanya Duggal. Sanya is the partner go to market and strategy manager, SMB Azure India and South Asia at Microsoft, and she will be giving us a deep knowledge about startups and the process of ideation. Hi, Sanya.
Hello, Oscar. Thank you for having me.
The stage is all yours.
Thank you. Okay. Is it possible to go through the comments, etc., from participants?
Sure, if you guys have joined us, do let us know in the comment section.
Okay. Yes, we can see comments. Superb. Okay. Thank you very much. Um, Before I actually begin, can I just probably get like a pulse check from, where are you joining us today from? Which city in India or outside, if you are outside? You can just put it on the chats, and I am monitoring the chat. So it will be just be good to get a sense of who all do we have here with us, because otherwise talking to a screen is not that interesting, right? Okay, I see a couple of responses. Anyone else would like to share? Okay, I see lots of folks from Delhi. And are all of you BTech students? Are any of you working as well, or are you, in a different course type? Anyone would like to comment and let me know? Okay, I'm assuming everyone is a developer here, so everyone knows how to. Yes, okay. Most of you are engineering students, so probably okay. There's somebody who started a new venture. I'll be very interested in connecting with you just to understand what have you started and what do you do. Okay, there's a working professional as well. Superb. Okay, thank you very much for your responses, folks. It's just good to get a sense of being in a place with other folks who are responding to you. It becomes more like a two-way conversation, and it's very helpful that ways. First of all, a very big thank you for joining on a Friday evening. I'm sure you have a lot of passion and energy in you, which is why at the end of the week you're here to learn something new, given your time and giving in your efforts and presence as well. Thank you very much for that, and congratulations on taking that first step. Let me start with a quick introduction. My name is Sanya Dukal. I'm a partner go to market and strategy manager. I lead the India and South Asia markets here at Microsoft India for a segment that we call as small and medium businesses, and for Azure, which you might know is the cloud product of Microsoft. Uh, Whatever I'm going to share here on this webinar today has honestly, it's not sponsored by Microsoft. It's not. It has nothing to do. I'm not speaking on behalf of Microsoft, so please do not quote me that way. I'll be sharing more from my personal experiences because I've been spending a couple of hours, probably like every week or so. I do spend some time with startups and with small businesses as well. But like a quick introduction, I am a commerce graduate. I completed my schooling in 2010. After my graduation, I joined a startup called roofontop.com. It was in 2013. I worked there for about 2 years, went and joined a consulting organization called Protivity in 2015. Worked there for 4 years, went for an MBA to Management Development Institute in Gurgaon. Completed a 1 year executive full time program there, which was my MBA. And then I joined Microsoft in 2020. I'm still with Microsoft. It's been about 4 years here. Here I work with the SMB segment, which is the small and medium business segment. It includes businesses who are not that enterprise-ish in the Indian economy, but it also includes organizations such as startups or really small businesses, like very small businesses. Apart from what I do for a day job, I'm also a writer. So I write for different columns and online portals. I've also written a research paper. I'm a startup enthusiast and an angel investor. I do spend some time with startups every now and then because it just gives me a lot of good energy when I see people building stuff from grounds up. I like to mentor startups and young talents such as yourself, and I'm very, very happy and privileged to be here with you today. I do like to support NGOs who are into child education and employability. I also did a bit of freelancing work and worked with about 90 odd startups and small and medium businesses in the early part of my career. I no longer do that. Okay. Now, before I actually get going and share a few nuggets from here and there, can I quickly ask you one question? And please feel free to respond in the comments. There is no right answer. There's no wrong answer, but it's just to get an understanding from you on how you perceive things, right? So I mentioned two different things right now. I mentioned small businesses and I mentioned startups. Now, in terms of terminology, probably they sound fairly simple. It's a small group of people working towards a common objective, having probably a business that they are doing for profitability, right? But then, if I were to ask you, what is the difference between a small business and a startup? How would you describe it? Please use the comments section to let me know. As I said, there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. Please feel free to just share any top of your mind thoughts. What is the difference between a small business and a startup? Okay, I see very good inputs in here. Somebody's written startup is finding solution of a problem and providing new innovations with use of technology and creating employment. Superb answer. Chavi has written small business might have pre-roots. That's also correct. Anyone else would like to contribute? Both of these answers are correct. Absolutely correct. But I'm just waiting to see another 30 seconds if anyone else would like to contribute an answer. Yes, Chavi says startup is working on a different unique idea from scratch and building blocks for that. And there's an ID which I can't see the name, but it says whereas small business is selling and purchasing of products, but not probably a new innovation for society. That's correct. Okay. Let me go to the next slide and share a bit more about that. The difference between a startup and a small business is probably the pace at which they operate, the growth that they see for themselves. Let me take an example. If I open a bakery today, right, I will need some money. I will put in some money and then I'll maybe take a real estate space. I will put in some products. I will get in a few people who will help me build it. That's most likely a small business. Why is it a small business? Because it is very difficult to replicate it without investing the same amount of efforts. Also, it's slightly more difficult to grow. Plus, there is nothing too unique about it, right? There are a number of bakeries, especially in areas like Delhi, NCR, Mumbai, metro cities in India. There are already a number of bakeries like that. So, probably I cannot call it a startup. What can I call a startup? A startup is typically built with the intent to disrupt an industry. Be that innovative, find a new solution. The problem can be an old one, but the solution is typically new and innovative. So, a startup is meant to grow rapidly. It aims to disrupt an industry. It brings in fresh, new innovation, and it intends to capture a large market also fairly quickly. Startups focus on finding scalable business models and they transition into fully fledged companies like what we call as unicorns today. You might see them transitioning into fairly large organizations fairly quickly, and they seek scale. Small businesses are not that fast paced, they are not looking to disrupt industries. All they're trying to do is find a market, reach out to it, earn some revenue, get some profits, take it home, right? And they intend to also work on it for the long term, but that idea of multiplication is normally not there. They typically seek growth. Now, you would hear these words very often, growth and scale. They sound similar, but again, I'll maybe ask you this question. What do you think is the difference between scale and growth? And you can again use the chat box to share your answer. What is the difference between scale and growth? Anyone would like to answer? What is the difference between scale and growth? Okay, I'll just wait for 30 more seconds. I see really good answers here. Harsh says scaling is growing of business to other markets and maybe countries and then listing it to IPO, especially for startup. Pooja says scaling is about increasing revenues and minimizing the cost. Chavi says scaling refers to the process of rapidly growing and expanding a business, typically in terms of revenue, customer base, and employee headcount. Yes, all of these answers are actually correct. If I were to put it slightly simply, growth is addition, whereas scale is multiplication. When we talk about growth, it can be, say, let me take the example of that bakery once again. If I have opened a bakery and I seek to grow it, maybe I can open up another bakery. But then the input cost, the amount that it is taking me to open another one of those shops, is pretty much equal to the amount that I invested in the first place. I cannot multiply it that easily. Even if I take a lot of funds from, say, investors as well, and I want to open 10 bakeries, the effort to do all of that will still be same, and even the profitability will remain almost equally same, right? Whereas scalability has a multiplier effect. So the idea is that you initially put in money, you get something which is self-sustainable, which can sustain on its own, then you add in funds, and then it is able to multiply. The difference between growth and scale, growth, if I am putting in 2x, if my input is x and my output is y, I increase my inputs to say 5x, the output also becomes 5y or perhaps a 7y or maybe a 4y as well. But scaling is truly when you are increasing your revenue footprint, however, you're not increasing the costs in the same proportion. So if my input is x and my output is y, I make the inputs as say 5, the output actually becomes a 10y or it becomes a 15y. I add in another 5 or 7 units of say x, and then my output becomes say 20 or 30y. That is true scalability. The entire concept of a starting up of a business, right, of a startup, comes from the fact that it is able to scale. First of all, it is innovative. Secondly, it disrupts an industry. Thirdly, it is scalable. It has a multiplier effect. And which better industry to find a scalable solution than technology? So while you can have, say, a manufacturing unit, or you can actually start something like a financial services firm or a banking unit, right? All of these are very cost incentive. Technology startups, on the other hand, are much more scalable. And you would have noticed this in the last 5, 7, 10 years, that the number of technology startups have actually grown. So now in education, you actually don't see education businesses coming up. You see edtech businesses coming up. In financial services, you see fintech companies coming up, right? In healthcare, you see health tech companies coming up. So technology has become an integral part of how industries have traditionally always functioned. Okay, there are a couple of more comments in the chat that I can see here. But now I will take you through on a small journey with me. And this journey starts back from the time when I worked at a startup. Like most of you, completing your graduation, or at that point in your career where you are just starting about making your career for yourself. A career, as I feel, is about 40 odd years, right? And when you start out, at least from the 0 to 3 or 4 years of um, career time, is the time when you're trying to build something new, when you're trying to learn something new. I started my career in 2013, so I had just finished my graduation, and I was thinking, hey, what can I do for a living, right? Where can I actually go? Where can I actually find a job? And the one skill set that came to my mind that I could do, I could probably write a little bit. So I gave a couple of interviews. I went to an organization called roofontop.com. It was into real estate, but then it was a technology organization. It was kind of an e-commerce for real estate at that point in time. I went there, I got the job, and I joined in there. I stayed there for about 2 years, and after that, I've moved across organizations, as I shared earlier. I want to take about 5 to 7 minutes and share that experience and story with you on how that startup had actually shaped up, because it gave me a lot of the inputs that I'm going to be sharing with you later down the slides, etc. Okay. And of course, I don't want it to be boring, so I thought let me share something which I've experienced myself. So at the age of 20, okay. At the age of 20, I went for a couple of interviews in different organizations because I was trying to apply for the job of a content writer. I happened to go to the office of this one organization called roofontop.com. This place was actually a real estate organization. They were trying to develop a portal which was meant to serve the needs of the real estate buyers in the market, right? Fancy office, swanky building. You can see on the right hand side, there's this picture. This office was based in Gurgaon. The interesting part was, as I walked into the office, I realized that apart from me, there were just three other employees sitting. There were two founders. The founders gave me a writing test. They gave me a topic and I had to write something. And then I had an interview with the founders and I got the job. When I entered in and they said, okay, you have to give a writing test, they gave me a topic. The topic was called, If It Is to Be, It Is Up to Me. I will repeat, if it is to be, it is up to me. What it meant was that if something has to happen, if there has to be a dent in the universe, right, then I have to be the person creating it. I found the topic very interesting because normally when you go for writing tests and things like that, right, the topics are fairly drab and not as intriguing. But that one sentence stayed with me and it has stayed with me till date. If it is to be, it is up to me. I wrote something about it and how ownership matters, how a vision matters, how a mindset matters, and things like that. And after that, I met the founders of the organization. It was their first venture in the real estate space. Both of them were actually technologists and they were from the US. They were Indian people born and brought up in US, and they were willing to start a company here in India. They had employed three people so far. The first person was into human resources because she was responsible for recruiting all the other people. The second person was a product manager because this was a portal. They needed a product manager in house to actually manage that product. The third person was an IT guy. He was responsible for managing the small servers and on-prem setup that we had at the organization back then. Remember, this was in 2013, and between that day and today, a lot of things have actually changed, right? And how we work with technology, how we work with the cloud. But at that point in time, we had a small server setup in the office. What these people told me about the overall setup was that they were trying to disrupt the real estate market in India because the portals in the real estate market were they were not very consumer centric. They were very broker centric because how the industry operates is there are people building houses or building commercial estates, right? Then there are brokers in the middle, and then there are users or purchasers of that particular product. But there is no portal which actually simplifies the needs for all of these parties involved. So they had planned to develop this portal and they called it India's first consumer centric property portal. Now, to develop a product, you need a bit of financing, right? You need a couple of lakh rupees to actually make like a full-fledged product which can be taken to the market. So instead of having that team in-house, because getting 10 developers in place and then making them do rounds and rounds of iterations on the product, they actually hired an agency which was based in Mumbai. But to manage that agency and get the product in shape, they hired a product manager, which was the second employee of the company. I was a content writer and I was the fourth employee of the company. My job was to create interesting content which could actually go out on the portal. Now, I joined this company 3 days after my interview. I negotiated the offer, joined the organization, and there I was. So the first thing that we did, what I got to learn from there was that okay, they were looking at building a team, but building a team also had different aspects, right? There were places that could be outsourced. For example, that team sitting out of Mumbai, and then few very intrinsic roles that they wanted to have in house in the office setup itself. So a couple of roles were hired in house. Then the product was to be developed because this is what you need to take to the market. So months and months were spent. I joined there in June of 2020 of 2013. It was about August, so we had spent about 10-15 weeks, everyone just getting the product in place. And how everyone thought about it was, hey, we are building this really cool, superb website. We are going to launch it on the 31st of August or some random date like that. The day we launch it, there are going to be number of people who are going to be flocking to our website, and we are going to turn rich, as an organization overnight, and everyone is going to have an IPO, like stocks from the IPOs, and we are going to be like rich people. So somewhere on 31st of August, the website was launched, and guess what? On 1st of September, we had nobody. This is how it was meant to be, right? This is when reality strikes you. So then the founders felt, okay, we've made a really cool product, but then we need probably a bit of marketing around it. Now, because it was an e-commerce website, and at that point in time, digital marketing in India was still fairly new. There were two components to marketing. So there's marketing that's done free of cost. You create a LinkedIn page, you create a Facebook page, you create an Instagram page. At that point in time, Instagram was not that prevalent or existent for that matter. But then you needed a LinkedIn page or a Facebook page where you could post stuff. But that will not get you audiences, right? You need to do some paid marketing. So then few more people were hired to indulge in marketing. There was somebody who would go and share, who would connect with people on LinkedIn and try to build an organic network. Then there was somebody who was hired for search engine optimization. If some of you might know, when you search something on any search engine, whichever search engine, there are a few results that show up. So at the top, the two or three results which you see are actually paid advertisements, and the ones underneath are optimized for the search engine results. So there, two or three people were hired who would do this kind of marketing. Now another 3 weeks passed, 4 weeks passed, and we still did not have like a lot of traction. Yes, we did have a few inquiries, few people coming and asking, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? Fine. That's how we started learning about marketing and how do we really get this product in the hands of the people who are willing to use it. Now, this was a question that needed to be answered. Gradually, we figured out what worked better for us. Do we do paid advertising? Do we do free advertising? Do we try to go to trade shows, road shows? Do we try to do something very different and creative? How do we reach our customer? Ultimately, we figured out that in digital marketing was the best point, but then we needed to have people who could speak to the customers on the call, because how else would they reach us? How else will they know that we have the best products in the country to offer, and probably we have the best discounts, because on the back end we had tie-ups with a lot of builders. So then we hired a call center team. Then, when the call center team came into place and anyone would put in an inquiry on our website, the call center team would call them and they would speak to them and be like, okay, we have this and we have that. And because it's a real estate purchase, right? Nothing comes under, say, 1 CR, 1.5 CR at that point in time in a place like Gurgaon. Nothing comes under 50 lakh rupees, say, in a place like Noida. And if you look at Delhi, the numbers are, 10 times of the numbers that I just quoted you. So then the customers would say, hey, we want to go and visit the site. And then all of a sudden, the founders realize, hey, we also need salespeople. Because then how else are we going to go and actually show the product and show the properties to the people? So then a sales team was hired. Now, up till this point, we had reached the next year, which was January or February of 2014. The founders started to think, okay, now we have a marketing team in place, we have a call center in place, we have a sales team in place, and okay, by the way, I was transitioning through roles all of this time. I was not sticking around as a content writer. I got involved in marketing, I got a bit involved in sales, I got a bit involved in digital aspects, I got a bit involved in team building, etc. So I was very closely working very, very closely with the founders, and thus I could see everything from their lens versus just my lens. Now, in January or February, they started focusing on something else. They were like, okay, now we have spent a lot of money. We've spent money hiring people. We have spent money building the product. We do have a few people who are interested in making a purchase with us, but then there's actually nobody purchasing from us. So now what do? They thought, let us get some funding, right? We need people who can actually support us, people who are committed to as much committed to the business as we are. Thus, a search for funding started. And that's how the founders started reaching out to more and more angel investors, people that they knew from their networks who could invest more money so the company could be run for another few months. Gradually, we did get few investors because the founders that I had really good networks and connect, and they were able to pitch their idea in a very interesting fashion to the investors. We did get in some money so that we could fuel the organization for another 3, 4, 5 months. But when the money came in, also came in the pressure of showing profitability for the business, because you cannot last very long on investors' money, right? The investor is putting in money in your business so that they can earn a profit out of it. But for that, what do you need first? You need to be profitable as a business first. So then the founders started looking again, and how do we make money? So then we did a small analysis on where were our investors coming in from, the users, where were they coming in from? So users were of three types. There were people looking for residential properties, there were people looking in for commercial properties, and then there were core investors. When I say investors in the real estate space, they're not people who are looking to actually rent out an office space or even rent out an apartment or purchase one. They are the people who purchase from one end, keep it for some time, and then sell it off to somebody else. So we realized that probably as a business, the best part for us would be to reach out to this set of people, people who are purchasing properties but not for the purpose of living in. They're purchasing properties for the purpose of investment. They have a lot of money, they've already purchased stocks and gold and invested in mutual funds, so now they're looking at investments in real estate. Why did we choose this segment? Because what happens is when somebody is purchasing a residential estate or somebody is purchasing a commercial estate, which is for own consumption, the decision making is much longer. Plus, because it's just a one time purchase, they are going to take a very, very long time. Plus, they will have many more considerations. Investors, on the other hand, are not that choosy because their purpose is profitability. When we delved deeper into the space, we realized that there was a niche product which was called pre leased commercial properties. What is pre-leased? There is a person A who purchases a bare shell and a completely empty commercial space. They furnish it, they find a tenant, and the tenant could be a Go Ivibo, could be an Apple store, could be anyone. They fit out the property, they get the tenant in, and now with a place which is already rented out to somebody, it is sold off to another person B. So this A person earns a lot of margin between all of these transactions: fitting out, getting a tenant, selling it to somebody else. So that's where we found our sweet spot. But now the thing was that we had actually turned into a small business versus a startup. We were no longer disrupting the industry. But then the question came of, is it, do you want profitability or do you want disruption? And after you've spent so much of money and everything into getting that business on its feet and figuring out how to truly make money, we could actually not go back. So then the founders kept on iterating, and came to the conclusion that on how can we actually become a differentiator in the pre-leased commercial property space? What can we do differently? So then what they did was they went around and they figured out that where had we really lapsed. We were trying to reach out to the user directly, but in this industry, there was no way to do that because there were brokers everywhere, there were agents everywhere, and they had deep expertise in the industry. So, what we had truly missed was we had missed the understanding that there are more players in the ecosystem which you need to take along. You cannot leave them out. So then the organization which I was working for, roofontop.com, we started finding people who were experts in real estate, but experts in pre-leased commercial properties and not in everything else. We went around with them, partnered with few of them, and became this organization became the digital lead generation arm for such organizations, because then now you could leverage your potential of being a digital player and you could leverage their potential of being experts in the real estate industry. So, thus, after about a journey of about 2 years, we were at a place where we figured out what our USP was, what Roof on Top's USP was, which was becoming a digital player in the field of real estate. Secondly, we had figured out our go to market strategy. So instead of trying to reach out to users directly, we would still reach out to users and get them in. But then instead of trying to close the deal ourselves, we figured out the players, dominant players in the market, and partnered with them. And third is we actually did not need the entire team that was there. So after a point in time came an optimized model where founders' money was it started paying off well. We were able to make some profits. We were able to get in a few customers. The time that I left the organization in August of 2015, we did have about 100 plus customers, and they were well paying customers. And because they were investors, right, there was a option of selling to them and then reselling to them and then reselling to them. We were partnering with some of the best organizations across Gurgaon, and the company had finally found its footing. Now, why did I share this journey with you? Because there were a number of things that I learned about building a startup from there. Now, between 2013 and till date, a lot has changed. A lot has changed. It's been 11 years past. I'm still very much involved in the startup ecosystem, as I mentioned to you, but a number of things have changed, right? First of all, technology has changed. The time that I was there, we were actually running an on-premise setup. Today, everything is cloud. Whatever you see, you're watching movies on cloud. All your entertainment is on cloud. All your learning is on cloud. You're utilizing edtech. Even for that matter, the way that we are having a discussion today, it's very common, right? This is how we interact in today's day and age. Secondly, India has become the hub of startups in today's time and age. Thirdly, now you are no longer dependent on your own mistakes to learn from them. You can obviously learn from other people's mistakes as well. And there are models and there are methods that you can use so that you don't spend those 2 years learning about everything that I just told you, right? So today you have that capacity, you have that capability to learn things in a much faster fashion, much better fashion, and build out your own startup without getting all of those policies in place, right? Again, I will congratulate you on taking this step towards joining this cohort for building your own startup. I do hope that everyone here on this call is able to build a startup. And to aid in that journey, we'll be taking you through as a program, as this entire session goes by in the next 2 weeks. We'll be talking to you about different building blocks which will help you aid that journey, right? So as to make it faster, so as to make it more, so that you are able to make well informed and better decisions. Now, I will take a few of those tidbits, nuggets from the story that I shared with you, and talk to you about what are those building blocks that truly make up a startup, right? Let me start the first one, which I personally feel is the most important. Being a founder, being an entrepreneur, being somebody who starts up your own organization, it all starts with a mindset, right? It all starts with the entrepreneur's vision, it all starts with your spirit, and it all starts with your ownership content. And remember the topic on which I had written my first article? It said, if it is to be, it is up to me. Let me decode it one more time for you. A founder is an owner. That means they take ownership of everything that is to be done. If something is breaking, nobody else is going to come and do it for you. Even if nothing is breaking, even if you are ambitious and you want to do something, you have to remember to take the first step. You have to own that first step. And even if it does not go right, you still have to say, hey, okay, I wanted to try it out and I did. Every single bit of that organization has to be done by you. You will for sure hire experts to do other things for you, but then you are at the epicenter of it all. Because if it is to be, it is up to me, right? So as a founder, as an entrepreneur, the first thing is mindset. The first thing is vision. What do you want to build? How do you want to build it? And whom do you want to build it with? After you, and I'm assuming that most of you are already on that stage where you have something in mind, and this is why you have signed up to be a part of this cohort. Once you get through this, there are a number of building blocks which can help you on this journey, and I'll talk through them one by one, right? I will just be giving you a brief overview about what all of these blocks are. But the speakers whom you'll be interacting with in the weeks to come, each one of them is an expert in one of these areas, and they will be talking you in depth about each one of these topics. Okay. Let us start with product development. As I mentioned, I'm assuming that most of you are, since you're engineering students, you're developers, and you know how to build out a product, right? But before a product comes something which is an idea or an innovation. If you have an idea, if you have identified a problem statement in any industry, any area, anything that you do, anything that you've seen, and you feel that there is an innovative way to solve for the solution, you are a creator, right? You are an owner. Pick up that idea, but just remember one small thing that I'll say now. Try to be an antacid and not a vitamin. Now, what that means is if you're building a solution which does not really solve for a problem, but is just a good to have something, it might or might not fly in the market. If it is something which is an antacid, that means it's solving the problem of, say, acidity for a person, right? It's actually catering to an area which is a real pain point for somebody. You are more bound to succeed. So instead of good to have things, think about must have things, things which can actually make a lot of difference in the market. And if you're an antacid, if you're doing something which can really solve a problem for a particular area, you are in for a very, very good time ahead. If your idea is innovative and you're looking to disrupt the market, the first thing that you will need is to think about technology, because now technology has that scaling effect. Technology has an amplifying effect. So you'll have to think about how do I build it. Now, once you've thought about how to build it, you will need to develop a MVP, a minimum viable product. Now, most people tell you about MVP, but what they don't tell you is about an MMP, which is a minimum marketable product. So while MVP is something that you have built out and can be used by other people, MMP is something that people will be willing to pay for. Okay, I'll repeat. A minimum marketable product is something that other people will be willing to pay for. Because if there are no takers in the market for what you're building, sooner or later it will die out. You will not be able to sustain for very long, right? So solve a problem that really is a very big problem. Second is build an MMP and then take it to the market. After that, you'll have to do a lot of testing just to get the initial user feedback and see where is it creating a difference, what are people using it for, and what is it that I can improvise in my product. And if you've watched Friends, just pivot, pivot, and pivot. What you started out initially with might not be the best version of it. But gradually, as you take a minimum marketable product to the market, and there are people who are willing to pay for it, willing to give you feedback for it, you will pivot a few times and you will get to a product which people actually love. This is about product development. Nobody can do it alone. Nobody can actually, you can start out alone, but eventually you will need a small team, whether that team is core or it is extended, whether it is in house or it is outsourced. You will need a few people. When I say core team, you might be really good at, say, developing the product, but there is somebody, maybe you have a friend who's really good at marketing. Why don't you come together and start out something? Having complementing capabilities always helps you. One person cannot do it all. A core team will be required, somebody who has probably like a good analytical mind and can understand a bit of numbers, somebody who knows how to go to the market, and somebody who can develop a product. If you don't have the capability in house or directly, look at extended teams. There are people who can do it for you, right? It might be an extended agency, it might be a group of friends who can do it for you, it might be somebody that you take up as an intern who can probably build it out for you. So team building in itself will take some time, right? Make the product, bring in the team together. This is about team building. Now, in the last couple of years, as I've interacted with more and more young people like yourselves, right, what I've realized is that there is a huge understanding, there's a very good understanding of how to make a product, maybe take it to a hackathon, get some, rewards and incentives or something for it. But there is a pretty much lack of understanding of how to make a profitable business out of it. I remember a one specific sentence that has again stayed with me, which is about which is about disruption. So disruption is not disruption unless there is somebody willing to pay for it. So if you are truly willing to start out a business of your own, you'll need to find out people who are willing to pay for it. If there is nobody paying for the product that you are building, it's not solving a specific problem for them, the business will not be able to survive or thrive, right? First question is product market fit. Now, what is this product market fit? Okay, let me go back to the story that I started from. I talked to you about building a portal which was called roofontop.com. Very good idea. We had a extended team and we had an in-house team who was building it up for us. We created a minimum marketable product. We launched it on 31st August and we thought, hey, now we have a super product. We've done all the pivoting, we've done all the testing. And tomorrow there are going to be so many people who are going to purchase it, right? But what we did not realize was that did the product actually meet the requirement of the market? Was it actually solving anything for anyone? No. And this is why it took us so much longer to actually get to that solution. Product market fit basically means what you're building and whom you're offering it to. Those both the things, do they actually really match? So say for example, you are a student in a college and you feel that there is a problem when people are trying to look for, say, accommodation when they enter the first year of college, right? You build out a small solution, and then you realize, okay, people do have a problem about it, but they don't need the solution. Why? Because there's a lot of tacit knowledge in the area, or maybe there are a lot of students with you who are helping out younger students to get accommodation. Thus the product, you have a good product, you've made a good app, but the market that you're trying to offer it to does not truly need it, right? Thus the question of that antacid and that vitamin comes in. Is your product fitting the market that you're offering it to? Second question, is the market big enough? That big enough market is called TAM, total addressable market. If you're taking a lot of pain, if you're building a product, but that product solves the need of a small percentage of people, to what capacity will you be truly able to scale? Not much, right? So solve a problem that impacts a lot of people, because if it impacts a lot of people and they're willing to pay for it, what will you have? You'll get revenue, right? Revenue is something that people mostly don't consider. We think, okay, we've made something cool, somebody is going to purchase it someday and we are going to be super rich. Does not work that way. Revenue, thinking about your revenue model should actually come in from day one. I asked you initially about the question of having a small business versus having a startup, right? But there are still a number of things that a startup needs to learn from a small business. While a small business might not be growing and thriving and multiplying their businesses, but they're profitable. They're profitable not from day one, they're profitable from day zero. They know who their customer is, they know what they're going to sell them to, and they have money to do that, right? So, those basics of revenue, of having profitability in your books and not just cash burn, should be incorporated right from day one. Then, remember I talked to you about, we had considered, okay, we had making a very cool product. The cool product is going to reach a lot of users. The users are going to pay us. But what did we miss out? We forgot that there were brokers and agents in the market who had very deep expertise in the area. So we did not think about business operations. We did not think about how are we going to run all of this ecosystem. So when you're building a product, when you're thinking about taking it to the market, think about the how many dimensions does the market had. If you're building an ed tech product, right? Say in the education field, who are my users? Whom should I take help from? Who are the people who are going to support me in business operations? If I'm say starting a delivery venture, then I need people on the field. Then I need people to do the last mile execution. Who is going to do that? How much is it going to cost me? And from that note, I will talk about unit economics. Now, what is unit economics? Very simple. I sell something for 10 rupees. I spend 6 rupees in marketing plus product development plus team. I earn 4 rupees out of it, right? And out of this 4, I still need to pay taxes and other things and keep this money for future building as well. So, in today's time, when you're thinking about a startup, most people are thinking cool product, sell it off, IPO, right? What people are not learning is that from that very small business who knows exactly what their unit economics is. I sell it for 100 bucks, I spend 60, I earn 40, I pay taxes, I still have 30, I reinvest it in the business. Superb unit economics. Such businesses don't die. If they're profitable, they won't die, right? So think about unit economics. This was about the business model. Now I come on to marketing and sales, right? Remember what I told you about? We had made a very nice solution, we had made a very good website, but what we had not realized was that there is not one way to reach the market. When I say one way to reach the market, it's not that you create a website and people just know about it all of a sudden, right? You will have to put in some efforts into marketing to make what the product that you're building, you have to get it into the hands of people who are willing to use it. And how do you do that? There's not one simple method. Okay, I apply advertising to it, digital advertising to it, and all of a sudden 50, 20, 30 people are using it. No, there are multiple ways to reach out to the market. There's something called a funnel in marketing, if you might know of it. There's a top of the funnel that you build, so that means there are people who are aware of your product. The funnel works on an AIDA concept, AIDA: awareness, interest, desire, and action, right? So when we talk about marketing, and I'll keep sales aside for a time because while it sounds overlapping, it's not at all the same thing. It's a very, very different thing. Different but interrelated. So a funnel works in the concept of AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, and action. When you are reaching out to a number of people, say via digital mediums, or even if it's word of mouth, you're sharing WhatsApp messages, or you're sending out emailers, or even if you've put up a booth, or you're doing a road show, anything like that, you are actually targeting the top of the funnel, which is awareness. You're letting people know that you exist. Once you keep on nurturing those same people, you reach out to them with more mediums and more modes. You bring them onto the interest stage. Interest is, yes, maybe I can buy it. Okay, looks interesting. After the interest stage comes the desire stage. Desire is where people are actually willing to give you money for it, right? This, they have a certain need that they have, they recognize they have that need, right? Your product or solution is fulfilling that need for your customer, and once it fulfills that need, they are willing to pay you for it. That means they are at a desire stage. Now this is where marketing typically slows down, because now you've got the interest of the people, you have nurtured them. Now is the job of sales. What does sales do? They offer the right discount, they offer the right pricing strategy, and they convert it from desire to action. What do you get from that action? You get a converted customer. Now, to do all of this, just one digital marketing, one roadshow, one event, etc., is not sufficient. There can be multiple ways to leverage the market. There are many, many things in the market. For example, channels of distribution. And when I say channels of distribution, let me take an example which is slightly closer home. So, Microsoft has a B2B business, right, which means business to business selling. We have about 17,000 partners in India. We actually don't deploy all of the products ourselves that we create. It's actually the partners who are doing it for us. And when I say partners, these partners can be as big as, say, a Wipro, a TCS, or an HCL, and they can be as small as the small IT shop, say, in your neighborhood market, right? So there are partners at all different levels. What they do is they are in touch with the customer directly. They purchase licenses or subscriptions from Microsoft. They offer it to the customer. They also offer implementation to the customer along with value added services. Let me go back to my example of the bakery. Say now the bakery has 5 different chains and they have a lot of data, and they want to keep a track record of the customers who are coming in, people who are getting deliveries from them, say via Zomato or via Swiggy or other mediums, and they want to have all of this data in one place. Now, what do? They will need some cloud product, they will need some subscription, they will reach out to Microsoft for it. And obviously, they can simply take a credit card, go to the Microsoft website, purchase Azure, keep all of that data on the cloud. But then they might not be the best people to do it, the people at the bakery, because they are good at what they do, but they might not be that good at the IT aspect for it. And this is exactly the need that an IT partner organization fulfills for the customer and for Microsoft. They act as the exchange of information plus services in the being the middle layer. But this middle layer also has multiple layers, right? So we have distributors in the market, distributors such as, say, Reddington or Ingram, who are at the front level of taking down the licenses or the consumption subscriptions. And then there are these partners. So this is a completely B2B model. I know it can sound a little bit complicated, but then that's how large organizations operate, right? It's not one simple way that they do to go to the market. Even if you're starting up your own organization, think about the different players in the market. Whom can you tie up with, right? Say that you're building a healthcare app for that matter. Who are your people who are going to be use it who are going to use it? I'm sure you already know about it, but then who are the people who can sell it with you? Who are the people who can actually benefit from your product and will be willing to take it to the market to a customer who is not your customer, but you can go via this channel, right? So you'll have to define your channels of distribution. You'll have to understand where your buyers buy from, make some partnerships in the market, and define a very specific go to market strategy. This terminology might be slightly new for you, but as I mentioned in one of the future sessions, one of the expert speakers is going to talk to you about this go to market strategy and how to really build it. Right now, my job, I think, is to give you this a sense of different aspects which impact a business and then get you thinking about it a little bit more, so that when and as and when you have those expert speakers coming in, you have a few things in mind and you're able to connect the dots better and faster. One more thing to consider in your marketing and sales efforts is, what is your unique selling proposition? What is it that differentiates your product, your solution, your app, your website, your whatever it is that you're building versus the competitors, right? And how do you bring forth that proposition to your ultimate buyer or your ultimate user? Similar to it, when we talk about USP, is what we are going and selling off to the customer or the user. Moat is something which saves your business from the competition around it, right? So in the very early times, the castles, right, the castles in different parts of the world used to have very high walls around it, right? Or sometimes even waterways around the castles. Why were they there? Because so that enemies could not attack the castle directly. So that extra layer of walls, or that extra layer of water bodies, etc., help prevent direct attacks to the castle. That is what was called a moat. Now, in the sense of a business, a moat is something which acts as your unique identifier, and it can protect you from competition coming in from outside and taking away your market share, right? So, as you think about USP, you will also have to think about moat. Marketing and sales again is a very deep concept, but as you're building up your own organization in one of the different stages, right? Maybe not today. Right now you are just focusing on product development. After that you'll focus on team building. After that, business model. Somewhere along the line you will also have to think about your ultimate user. Why will they buy from for me? So two sides to the market, right? There's demand and there's supply. Demand is who will buy from me, why will they buy from me, how will I sell to them. Second is the supply side. Of course, as I mentioned, how will I sell to them? But then also, how do I make their experience better? Who is going to support me in this selling journey? And how do I make sure that the customer is retained with me? Right? Now, to do all of this, you will need money, right? In my story, I shared with you that about 8 to 10 months down the line, the founders had exhausted their own capital, because when they started off the venture, they had own money to put into the venture. But after a point in time, there was not as much money left. So they had to reach out to external investors. But that's not the first stage. If you are somebody who just has an idea in mind right now and wants to build something, maybe you don't even need money. You can utilize one of the free resources that organizations offer. Typically, for example, Microsoft has a website or a program which is called Founders Hub, in which you enroll and you can get, if you have a registered business, you can get technology resources free of cost for 1.5 year for you to use. But then if you need money, because for other operations apart from technology, to hire people or for other things, if you need money, do you want to start out with your own capital? Do you want to get it from your friends and family? Or there are multiple different methods to get money as well. For example, hackathons have prize money, right? Or larger organizations who support startups often have grant programs, or uh, they have competitions, etc., wherein you can participate. Especially if you're a student, you might have many of those combinations available as well. There are also accelerators in the market. There are also venture capital firms who have their own smaller subset unit of organizations who support startup founders in their journeys by investing as well. So those are also options which were not there, at least not that prevalently there 10 or 11 years down before today. But right now, those options are there as well. Once you have grown to a sustainable stage, right, where you understand where is your business model, how do you make money out of it, how do you market your product, how do you have the sales functions in place, you can also look at better forms and more defined and programmatic forms of funding, which is angel investing and venture capital. While angel investing is done at really small stages, you might not even have that much traction on your platforms as in that at that point in time. You can still get angel investors who are willing to put in money in your concepts. And not just money, angel investors are actually the people who help you with networks. They help you with mentorship opportunities. They also help you with your business models, etc. Venture capital firms, on the other hand, are actually fairly big organizations. They primarily are there, once you have established some credibility for your business in the market. That's when they step in, they purchase the shares from the angel investors, and then they say, okay, now we are going to help you truly scale up and have that multiplier effect, right? For that, what will you need to know additionally? You will need to understand and know how does valuation work, how do I value my business, right? How does the process of funding work? Because after a point in time, taking money from somebody, investing it in your business, and having the accountability of profitability, it's not that simple. It's not a one way street, right? There are a number of things that you will need to know and you will need to learn. My founders had figured it out fairly late in the game that they needed profitability, they needed funding, etc., and thus the business could not survive for very long. I'm sure some of you would have already tried to figure out that website, but it no longer exists. After I left it, the business sustained for about 2 to 3 more years, and then ultimately it died down. But as I said, the difference between that time and the time today is that today there is simply no dearth of resources. There's no dearth of resources, there's no dearth of mentorship, there's no dearth of knowledge which is available for you, right? If you learn things faster, if you are able to implement it fast, you will have a successful business soon, right? And then we come to the last part about scaling. When I say, you remember I asked you the question on what is the difference between growth versus scale. If you're looking to scale your business, what happens is you're building something, right? In all the blocks, the 5 blocks that we talked about, or rather the 4 blocks, you figure out what do you want to sell, how do you want to sell, who will support it, business model, how are you going to make profits out of it, how are you going to get revenues out of it, etc., and how are you going to fund all of this process, right? Once you've figured out all of this, you have certain customers in the market. Believe me, there's a book, by the way, which is called Zero to One, right, by Peter Thiel. Spend some time if you can, read that book. That book says that getting something from 1 to 10 is difficult, but probably more difficult than that is to take it from 0 to 1. And that is where your most of your learning comes on as well, right? How does scaling truly work? It's not that, hey, I've made something, it's working well, there are people buying it. That process is not that linear. It's a very non-linear process. It has a multiplier effect to it. When you make something, you get your first customer. That customer obviously gives you money, but then also teaches you a lot of things. First customer, second customer, third customer are probably your best customers because they teach you the most as well. Once you get to that stage, then comes the possibility of taking it from a 3 to a 30. Now, once you have sold it to 30 customers, you have enough customers to identify that what am I solving for, which marketing channel is working for me, how am I able to serve this customer well, right? You have exactly tested the water flowing through the pipes, as we call it, right? So you have built the pipe, but now you also know how water passes through the pipe, and now you're ready. Now the multiplier effect truly starts for you. Those 30 customers in much lesser time become 300, and as and when you get 300, as and when you get funding sufficient to sustain it, you can have a multiplier effect. So what how funders or how people who are funding a business think about it is, they think if the business is ready, if the business is self sustainable, now they understand how demand is working in the market. That means, what do customers want, how am I serving my customer, how is the supply functioning, how is my product, am I able to fulfill the needs of it. If your product is ready, they will infuse funding into your business, and that is when the businesses truly just explode. And when I say explode, I mean the multiplier effect comes into place. That's so if I were to make a curve out of it, a curve on a chart, I will make it a straight line when your product is growing, and then it comes to a point as which is called as the inflection point. And from there, if you get funds, your business will typically grow like this. It will simply grow upwards, and the curve is no longer linear. The curve is very non-linear. You've hit an inflection point, and you will be able to grow from those 300 customers to 3000 in pretty much no time. That's when you have achieved true scalability. The growth is super fast, and now you've unlocked, right, what is truly takes to disrupt a market. You've really reached the pinnacle of disruption, if I can call it that way. These were just building blocks of how a startup is made and what all things that it goes through, right? But then in the time to come, each of these actually deserve much more time, and you will also need to spend a bit more time learning about each and every aspect. But what I can suggest you or request you is that since you have joined this session today, think about that one idea that you would really like to take to the market, and start thinking about these different aspects one by one. As different speakers come to you, speak to you in the over the course of the next few weeks, and you have different sessions, take learnings from each one of those sessions and try to deploy those learnings as and when you're learning them. Don't wait for a perfect time. There's no perfect time. Today is the perfect time because you're thinking about it today. Make whatever you're learning in theory, put it into practice, put it into implementation, and you will see that these blocks will actually start making more sense to you. So if you already have an app in place and you want to take it to the market, maybe do a test run with about 15 users, 20 users, 30 users, and you will get to know your product market fit, right? If you want to try out a bit of marketing, why not spend, like, say, maybe 300 rupees or 3000 rupees? I'm just giving an example, and see if there is somebody actually, if you're able to build a top of funnel for yourself or not, right? So one request that will have for you is, over the course of this duration in the next 2 or 3 weeks, as you have these sessions coming up, keep each of the things in mind, and as and when you meet the speakers, ask your questions, but implement what they're teaching you, and you will have a very, very good learning experience than just learning, virtually or just off the slides. Now, as I said, I have just given you a very brief overview of how different aspects in a startup work. And it's not just about the product. Product is one part of it, but then there are multiple aspects to it. There are actually three aspects to it. There's product that you have to think about, there's business that you have to think about, and then there's strategy that you have to think about. In the coming few sessions that you will have over the course of next few weeks, you will have expert speakers on each one of these topics, and they will walk you down through everything that I've shared with you today. I'll take a quick minute and walk you through these session details as well before I open it up for Q&A. So your next session is going to be tomorrow, 5 to 6 p.m. And it's going to be on building your team and how to develop a business model. The first two blocks that we spoke about. After that, tomorrow itself, you will have one more session, which is on mental well being for startup founders. Again, a very, very important topic because the journey is very fulfilling. The journey of a startup founder is very fulfilling, but it's also very challenging, right? And challenge is where growth comes in from. So, Kapil is going to be talking to you about mental well being for startup founders. After that, you will next week you will have a session on product development and technology utilization, and how to truly develop a product, what resources to use, and how to make a product which will actually be useful in the market. After that, you will have a session with Saurabh Agarwal, who will talk about marketing, funding, and scaling. And then at the end, on 27th of July, you'll be having a closing ceremony at the Microsoft office in Gurugram, 11 a.m. But these 2 or 3 weeks, you have a number of things to go through. And I hope that this journey is as enriching for you, and you are able to, truly make the best out of it. With that, I will request you to share your questions on chat and I can probably answer them. Askar, are you still around? Okay, folks. Remember, I said the journey of a startup founder begins with the mindset, right? The vision that you have. And that one thing which said, if it is to be, it is up to me. If something has to happen, I have to make it happen. I would encourage you to, if you have that mindset of making it happen, maybe start now. If you are looking to start up your own business, any question, no question is right, no question is wrong, but please do share a question so that I also understand that, you are actually eager to start up something of your own. You can share your question in the chat, please.
Hi, Sanya.
Hello. I'm just waiting for questions. Okay, so either everyone understood everything or nobody understood anything. I'm hoping, okay. Folks, okay, maybe you can answer this. Was it too much for you to grasp in one session? Do you want me to delve deeper on something specific that you heard but probably did not understand fully?
Do you have any questions in the comment section?
No, I don't see any as of now. Okay, there's a question. What is the purpose of this cohort?
Very
It's
good.
the, huh?
Very good question.
Yeah, I'll answer that maybe. It's the include her cohort, which is meant for people, female developers particularly, who are interested in starting up a business of their own. So the idea is to give you a series of sessions through the coming weeks. The session details, which I just shared with you. Um, so the idea is that you are able to learn the building blocks of a startup and probably start a business of your own. Harsh says session was amazing. Loved it. Thank you very much. If you have questions, or I'm sure there would have been something that probably you did not understand or you would want to know more about. So I'm around. Okay. Pooja says that she's looking forward to learn more from this cohort. Amazing. Okay, let me reshare the slide which I had shared before, and then if there's something specific that Askar, maybe you can take this one. How to register for the cohort?
Let me share the link with everyone.
Sure. I am sharing the slide, the main slide which I had talked about, because it covers two things. One is in my learnings, it covers, what all does it take for you to build a startup, and secondly, it is exactly the schedule of sessions that you're going to follow in the coming few weeks. Let me just take a moment and share. Yeah, so I had shared all session details and I talked mostly through this slide, which are the building blocks of a startup. Or it takes all of these things for you to actually make a startup, and all of the speakers who are going to follow in the consecutive weeks are going to take up one of each of these topics and talk to them in much more detail. But if there's something specific that you would want me to answer or help you with, I'll be more than happy to answer. Yeah, startup should be related to cloud services only. Not really. These are learnings that you can apply in a lot of different areas, fields, and industries. Divya. However, the reason that we took cloud services as an example, or maybe technology startups as an example, was because most of the audience that is signed up is from that cohort and wants to start up something in tech. Plus, it's a very scalable model, right? Technology startups are slightly more scalable than other ventures, but any small business can learn from it, and any startup can learn from it. I'm sure there's something to learn for everyone. Okay, we will give it 30 more seconds. Okay, the youth talk says, "Hi Sanya, great presentation. Thank you. I really wish you touch upon the tough side of the startup also." Absolutely, absolutely. uh, while people perceive that startups are very fancy because that's how it's very glamorous, founders, yeah, women. Okay, I'll answer this one next. But people think it's very glamorous. IPOs coming out, people becoming famous overnight and everything. But I remember a quote from one of the startup founders who said, it took me a decade to become an overnight success. And that's actually how the journey of a startup is, or how an entrepreneur is. It takes years and years of learning, grinding, efforts, etc. There is a tough side to it as well. It comes with its own set of challenges, but it also has a very fulfilling side to it as well. There's a huge risk, there is a huge reward. The idea of this cohort is to bring more and more things into focus for you, so that you are able to learn things faster and learn them in a more systematic and programmatic fashion, rather than actually testing out everything and failing for yourselves, right? So the idea is that you are able to learn more from lesser challenges, and that's where the intent of the cohort is. Yeah, for example, the struggle to get resources. How do you suggest a startup should go about it? Very good question. There is a lot of struggle for resources. There's a struggle for building your own team. There's a struggle for bringing in money. There's a struggle for finding the right mentors, etc. But as I'll share something on that note. Today we are living in a very non-linear world, right? Resources are available if you know which door to knock, right? And the ecosystem is much more friendly and supportive towards startups as it was, versus what it was a couple of years ago. So there are things available, resources are also available. For example, pretty much all hyperscalers have programs for startups where technology is offered free of cost, at least for a specific duration. For example, Microsoft's founders have offers you technology resources free of cost for 18 months, right? Similarly, other resources, for example, the government also supports startups, and thus they offer you grants, they offer more sessions and programs where you can register and get that money. If you have heard about Y Combinator, it will also support you. So there are struggles, I completely agree. There are also resources are slightly lesser, but today the purpose of this entire session and modules will be to introduce you to resources where finding resources is not that difficult, right? How do you get access to mentorship? How do you get access to money? How do you get access to technology resources? How do you get access to the right people? How do you build your own teams? The idea of this cohort and these sessions is to make the journey a little bit more easier for you and help you leverage the ecosystem which has actually come in the place to help you. Yeah, how do startups get government support in terms of money and business? You can get actually both of them. One of the future sessions, I think that session is on funding. The person who will be coming in will tell you about this as well. How the government is supporting these initiatives. How even associations and organizations like say ASOCHAM and NASCOM support with such initiatives. In terms of mentor and in terms of business opportunities as well, there are a number of things that happen today. Government has a program, right? Government has Startup India, through which they try to support different organizations. So we will be covering these, but different speakers, experts in their areas will be covering these topics um, over the course of the next few sessions. World of Bollywood is a platform here which says that men are called entrepreneurs and who start businesses should also be called entrepreneurs. I 100% agree with what you're saying. Why they call us women entrepreneurs? I 100% agree with it. And, the change begins with us, the change begins with I. Let us start calling everyone an entrepreneur, people who are into entrepreneurship, and gradually we will come to a more inclusive and equal world. Okay, Anand says, I am from Patna and want to build a company here. Local problem address karna chahiye. Yeah, like people say, think big and address national problems. Please guide me. What you're saying, Anand, is absolutely correct. There is a there are problem statements to be solved at every level, whether it is at a metro level, whether it is at a global level, whether it is at a national level, whether it is at a city level, right? And it just depends completely on you, on which problem do you want to pick up and solve for your own self, like what is it that you relate to. Because A company begins with the founder. It begins with that ownership mindset and that owner's attitude, right? So wherever you think there is a problem that you would want to solve for, please go ahead with it. Also, that is a calling, that is about attitude, and that is about ownership. On the other hand, if I look at business opportunity, right, in metropolitan cities, or on a even on a global level, there are a number of players who are addressing problems affecting people, right? But there is still more and more opportunity in the other cities of India, the non metro cities of India. So if you want to build a solution over there, why not? Definitely you can go ahead and build something. There are audiences who right now might not have the right solution, and if you have a good idea and you have good execution capability, you should be able to solve for it. So local problem, if you want to address, nothing like it, go for it. Okay, Chavi says building two companies in the augmented reality and virtual reality domain. In one, we are providing services on AR and VR technology. In the second one, we are training students and professionals for this technology. Is it important to have a product to have a scalable business? No, Chavi, absolutely not. Product or services, either way, either of them can be scalable. The intricacies of scalability lie in how you are executing it, right? What is that multiplier effect? And the idea is, how will you achieve unit economics over a long period of time? Or in economics, it's called as economies of scale, right? So maybe today, if you're serving, say, 100 customers and it is costing you X, tomorrow if you have to service 1000 customers, or if you have to serve 1 lakh customers, how much further will that costing go? And that will determine the scalability of your business. There are things that you can do to kind of fine tune things here and there, so that your input metrics are not as high, but your output continues to rise, and thus your revenue and your profitability continues to rise. So it is not necessary that you need to have a product to have a scalable business. You can do that with a services business as well. Only thing is, you'll have to go into the intricate details and figure out that how will you scale it, what is demand, what is supply, what is your strategy, what is your input metrics, what's your unit economics, right? Okay, there's a point here which says best place to start a business is tier one town, as there are availability of resources, VC, etc. But health goes deteriorate. If we start in small town, very lesser resources, but life health is good. Yes, that's also one point to consider, but I can probably add in one more perspective to that, right? Uh, Previously, as I mentioned, about 8-10 years ago, we did not have such a conducive ecosystem in India. As on date, we have a very conducive ecosystem in India who supports startups, either from a private perspective, or from a government perspective, or from a even global perspective. There are a number of players who want to support the Indian ecosystem of startups. Now, in that ecosystem, there are people supporting different aspects. I know of, and I can quote one example of one VC firm that I know the couple of people in there. They have an investment thesis, and I'm just taking one example. There are still many more like them. Their investment thesis a couple of years ago used to be invest in sustainable businesses, invest in, say, tech businesses, etc. But they revised their thesis just last year, and now they work on two investment theses. First of all, they don't want to invest in India, they want to invest in Bharat. Second is, they want to invest for businesses which are solving the needs and requirements of the generations which are now to come. So generation Alpha and generation Z. Now think about it. If VC firms have already started thinking about this, right? We don't want to invest in India. We want to invest in Bharat. That means there is a lot of focus and traction which is coming down to that level. So tier one cities, while they have availability of resources, I will not deny that. Those resources are now also coming to tier two, tier three, even tier four cities of India, and even coming to villages of India. There are a number of people, number of VC firms who are looking to invest in Bharat, and they also feel that people who belong to those areas are much more equipped to answer or to solve the needs of the users there versus somebody coming in from a tier one city. So opportunity is everywhere. It is just how you figure out how to tap into it. I know of somebody who runs a chain of business in Bihar, and she takes care of, like, basically it's for taking care of animals at the places of the farmers itself, agricultural lands and around areas. It's a well funded startup. They're also profitable, and they've been doing this for now for a couple of years. So you can go to any level, any geography, and you can find opportunity there. It is just about how you build that business in entirety and not just focus on one aspect, which will make you successful. Okay, there's a question that says, do you think servicing companies can raise capital? The data shows that only product companies have raised the funds and servicing companies aren't raising capital. Not necessarily. The equations might be shifted or skewed, right? For example, there is a difference. You will see some skewed data and investment thesis on everything. For example, B2B versus B2C companies. Organizations, or especially funding organizations, tend to believe that B2B companies are more successful than B2C companies, and thus they fund B2B companies more. But does that mean that B2C companies are not funded at all? No, I don't think so. Similarly, for servicing, if the servicing company has a scalable model that is also repeatable, right, they will find somebody to fund them. So it's not a black and white answer. The ratios and proportions might change. Okay, Chavi says, I wanted to join incubation or startup related programs, but they asked to dilute stakes. Is there any way to get mentorship without doing so? Chavi, that completely depends on what kind of mentorship are you looking for, right? So if you feel that out of these maybe five or six building blocks that we have been discussing, you probably are already good at say three or four of them, then you don't need somebody to handhold you through the entire process. Once you enroll for a incubation program or you enroll for a startup program, they tend to help you through the process, and in exchange they ask you for equity, right? But say if it is just one area or aspect that you feel you need a mentor for, onboard that mentor, right? Don't dilute your stake if you don't want to, but have a different model with them. It could be a mentor who is probably doing it free of cost for you because they've known you for a lot of time. It could be a mentor who is doing it for you and in exchange say for a consulting fee, right? So that's also possible. There could be mentors, say out of a network whom you might know, who will not even charge, right? So it just completely depends on what is it that you're seeking out of that incubation or startup related program. If you think you need mentorship for and hand holding right from start to the end, then probably one of the ways could be to opt for an incubation center or go for a program. And then yes, they might ask you to dilute the stake. But then in case you don't want all of that, you just need help with specific questions and specific mentorship support, you can always do that without diluting stakes. And yes, there are some good examples on the chat. Somebody's written about Vadvani Foundation Incubator and somebody's written a Zoho as well. Everything is possible. Don't go by what the majority or the data says, because data normally is spread over say 1000 or 1500 or 1 lakh impressions or data points, right? But then not everything applies to everyone. There's no definite answer or there's no definite way to do something. The proportions, equations, and what works for you will always change.
I guess there are no more questions. We'll wait for 30 more seconds.
Sure, we can give it 30 more seconds.
If there are any more questions, you can post it in the comment section. Sana is here with us for another 30 seconds.
Or if you have a question later, feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. You're welcome, Chavi.
I guess there are no more questions. Thank you so much, Sanya. That was an insightful session.
Thank you for having me.
I hope everyone has learned something today. and we'll see some good startups in the future. So thank you everyone for joining today. We'll catch up tomorrow, same time, for the next session of Include Her Startup Cohort. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone. All the best.